centralized management of user accounts and also centralized data storage and printing and other resources. Okay, so today we're going to be taking our server here, which in this case is running Windows 2003, and changing it to a domain controller. Now, a domain controller allows access to resources on the domain or the network, such as user accounts and so forth. Okay, so first of all, as you can see, I'm logged in as the administrator, and this is a Windows Server 2003. We've already got the basic install done. We've given it a name, we've given it an IP address, we've configured the network. If we just have a quick look, control panel, and go to network connections, you can see that the local area network is actually connected, and I'll just go to that. You can see it connected here, and everything's fine. So that's quite an important step. So I'll close that. Now, what we're actually going to do today is making it into a domain controller, and there's a number of ways of doing that. One way, we can actually go to Start, Administrative Tools, and then we've got a couple of options, either configure your server or manage your server. Now I'm going to click on manage your server. Both ways are very similar, and we get the manage your server wizard that comes up, and up the top here we've got the server name, LRC Server 1, which is the name we already gave the server when we first installed Windows 2003. And you can see down here that we have the server roles, and we've only got one server role at the moment. It's a file server. And this button up here, add or remove a role. Now we're actually going to want to add a role. We want to add it as a domain controller. Before we do that though, I just want to show you another way of actually doing that. We can actually do it from the command line. We can go to Start, we can click on Run, and then we can actually type in DC Promo, and if we wanted to, we could click OK, and this would also install it as a domain controller. We're actually not going to do that. I'm going to click Cancel, and we're going to go back to Manage Your Server and Add or Remove a Role. So I'm going to click on the Add or Remove a Role. Okay, now if you have a look, the wizard starts up, and it talks about some preliminary steps. These are things that you should do before you actually start installing it as a domain controller. The things that we've already done, install modems and network cards, attach necessary cables, make sure it's connected to the internet, turn on peripherals, printers, or whatever you might want to use. And the next one I think is quite important. It says, have your Windows Server 2003 setup CD available, or know your in-network installation path. Okay, so as we're installing it, it's actually going to need some files off the CD, so having the CD is very important. Okay, let's click Next. And what it's doing now is just detecting our local area network settings, see what's actually on the network, making sure we're connected. Okay, and now we've got the configuration options, and actually we've got a couple of options. We've got the first one that says typical configuration for a first server, and it simplifies, as it says, it simplifies the setup of a network, and it sets up a domain controller, installs DNS and also DHCP. The other option, custom configuration, allows us to decide what we want to do. Now usually I guess if it was the first setup we might want to do the typical configuration. Actually we're going to go for the custom configuration, which is the second option, and we'll click Next. And here you can see what you can add. There's a whole list of server roles and whether it's configured. So the first one, file server, it says yes, it's configured. All the rest are not configured. Now we actually want it to be a domain controller. That's the main aim of today. So we'll click on domain controller, and if we click on Next, it says run the Active Directory installation wizard to set up this server as a domain controller, which is what we want to do. And I'll click Next. And you can see that it automatically jumps into the Active Directory installation wizard. Now the Active Directory, what is it? This is I guess is a new term that we've just got. Now Active Directory is basically Microsoft's directory database for their networks. It stores information about resources on the network, and I guess it provides a means of centralizing and organizing and managing and controlling whatever resources that are part of that network. Okay, so this is the wizard to actually install Active Directory. The process of installing Active Directory makes the computer, the server that we're on, a domain controller. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next. This talks us about system compatibility, and I'll just click on Next. Okay, and this is the type of domain controller. We've got two choices. We can either have a domain controller for a new domain or an additional domain controller for an existing domain. An existing domain being a network we already have. Now, we don't have a network, so we're going to be domain controller for a new domain. And click Next. Then it says create a domain in a new forest. That's the first option. The second option is child domain in an existing domain tree, and the third option, domain tree in an existing forest. Now, for some of you this might be new terminology. The domain is obviously the network. It's the name for the network. Now, trees and forests. Obviously, a tree is actually a collection of domains within the same domain namespace, and a forest is a collection of trees within that. Now, with our one that we're actually starting here, we don't have an existing domain tree. We don't have an existing network that we want it to become part of or under. So actually it's going to be the first option.